Pull up a chair. You're invited to Welcome to the Table, a podcast where hope meets healing and honest conversations pave the way to restoration. Hosted by Tom and Michelle Weaver, this podcast is a safe space for those navigating the pain of sexual addiction, betrayal, brokenness, or the ripple effect of wounded intimacy. Drawing from their own powerful journey of recovery and redemption, Tom and Michelle bring real-life experience, faith-filled encouragement, and practical resources to those who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or alone. Whether you're struggling with sexual integrity, walking through betrayal trauma, or supporting someone in recovery, this podcast offers guidance, grace, and the reminder that healing is possible. At this table, there's no shame, only support, truth, and the hope of transformation. Join us as we turn what was meant for harm into a testimony of restoration, one conversation at a time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the table, and thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your Friday afternoon to enjoy some more time with Dan Drake, who will be joining us here in a minute. We want to thank you again for coming and spending some time with us. A couple of things I did want to bring up prior to getting started was a couple events that we have coming up. The Princess Warrior Retreat, the women's retreat, is 3 weeks from today. So 3 weeks from today, Princess Warrior Retreat, Sandy Cove, Maryland. Great speakers, Lachelle Burkett and Joanna Rabsmith are going to be there. We're going to have a men's panel there with 3 guys that will be answering all the hard questions from the ladies. And then October 26th to the 28th, I believe, is the men's retreat coming up. And our friend and guest today, Dan Drake, is going to be a special guest there speaking as well at that event with Rodney Wright from Pure Desire Ministries. And then the third thing we have coming up is the Bridge to Intimacy Conference again in March of 2026 with Dr. Jake Porter, Dr. Barb Steffens. So again, we welcome you here. We'd love to hear more from you. And if you have any questions during this podcast, this is live, so you're more than welcome to put some questions in the comments box in YouTube or Facebook and see if we can get them on screen and have Dan answer them if we can. But right now, let's bring Dan in and welcome him back. He's been a consistent guest for us over the last couple months, and we enjoy hearing from you, Dan, and love your input on so much. And you have a passion for disclosure and helping people walk in this journey together. So for those that maybe haven't seen you or heard from you before on here, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself? I know we've done it in the past, but
yeah, I wasn't prepared for that. But yeah, so it's good to see you, Tom. So I'm based in mostly Los Angeles, California, but also Idaho, Boise, Idaho, and founder and clinical director of Banyan Therapy Group. And yeah, like you said, I mean, what I've seen, my passion, my heart is to continue to help men and women restore their relationships. I've seen the traumatic impact of betrayal on relationships. So helping the betrayer understand this and help them heal, restore themselves, but also help restore and heal their relationships. So it's an honor to walk along this journey with couples. It's difficult, but it's also such an honor to see, people transform themselves in their relationships. So happy to be here.
Awesome to have you back. And he failed to mention that you're an author of several books. Yeah.
Oh, that too.
Co-authored with Janice Caudill and all of the disclosure books and walking through disclosure. So great stuff, great resource there, and appreciate all the work that you guys have done in that and helping people and guide people through disclosure. It's an awesome thing. So now, relational honesty after intimate partner betrayal. What's it look like? I know we had talked earlier and you said something about how the importance of honesty and relational healing post-disclosure. I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like, maybe what it doesn't look like.
Well, and I've got to can I be honest?
Yeah, be honest.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. It's live. And
so I was thinking about this and I've been thinking a lot more, this sounds it's so obvious. And if anyone has seen or heard, the Rabsmith and I, we wrote a whole book on the intimacy, on building intimacy and using the intimacy pyramid. Janice and I used it as a foundation for some of the work for healing with disclosure and through disclosure. To me, if you look at the intimacy pyramid, if you know it, at the base of it is a foundation of truth that's based on honesty. You can't build any kind of intimacy without honesty. So I was sitting here thinking about doing this. I've been really reflecting a lot on honesty lately and just how important it is. And I got to be honest, because a few weeks ago, this is what it looks like to me. It's the big things and it's the little things. We think of the big things first, but what does radical honesty look like? A few weeks ago, my wife asked me, what time do you start tomorrow? She just asked a simple question. Now, I started with clients at, let's just say, I don't forget exactly. Let's say I started at 9 is when I start seeing clients. I told her 8. I said, I start at 8 tomorrow. And wasn't untrue. Like I had planned, I was like, oh man, I have all this stuff to do. I was going to get, start an hour earlier. I literally was going to do that. I had things I was going to do for work. What she was asking though, wasn't about work. It was about when I was seeing clients. I took the syntax road in my head and answered the syntax, but it wasn't the whole truth actually, because why did I even say that instead of like, oh yeah, I start with clients at 9, but I have, a bunch of stuff to do that I'm going to need to get in and start earlier at 8. That was the truth. Right. I didn't say that.
Now, did you go back and tell her?
I did. Yeah. Did I want to? No, but I had this, but there've been other times where she'd be like, it's kind of the way I answer is kind of weird, where it's just like a simple answer to a question. Why did I do that? I think to me, honesty and radical honesty, I have to start with self-awareness first. Like what was that about for me? Was I afraid, I'm starting later today, so she's going to think I'm not working hard. And this is all family of origin stuff. Like somehow, I work hard. I'm not lazy by any stretch of the imagination, but was there worry? I guess for me, I grew up, questions were in some ways, I don't know if threat's the right word, but questions, there was a right answer to questions, and you had to pass the test through whatever the question was. So there was no simple inquiry about, what's happening. It was like, there felt to me, whether that's true or not, it felt like you're going to be punished, or you're going to be either you're approved of or punished by the result of your answering this question.
Driven by fear.
Driven by fear, 100%. So totally motivated by fear. So I guess I can say I lied because I took syntax, and so I had to own it. And it feels stupid even saying that, but like, that's to me radical. Why? And this is, I quote, I know better. Like I know this, I've done work, but I know better. But this is something that I think, and this might seem like a little thing, like, well, you weren't, and I could talk to people and I'm sure I would have gotten, well, you weren't really lying because it's true. You were working at 8 and I could have gotten pats on the back. But the truth was I knew what my wife was asking, and I didn't answer that question. I answered a different one. Yeah. So I think to me, I'm just thinking, and those are little things, but those little things pile up and can erode trust and safety over time. Because then my wife knows me well enough. She'd be like, you answered that a little weirdly. Why did you answer? And then she's going to pick it up. And there have been times where she'll be like, what is that like? And then she'll ask further questions. And it turns out, well, that's actually, I see clients later. And then, it's this weird thing. And she's like, well, why didn't you just tell me? It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And then she's probably thinking, well, if you lie about that, something so small.
But that's just it. And I think that's what I wanted with this, why I want to start with that example of dishonesty on my part when I know better is just that. Because if there is a history and people that we work with, they've had a history of betrayal in their relationships. Every betrayed partner, I hear just that. Well, if you're lying about something that's so insignificant, it's not even that big of a deal. You're lying to me about that. How do I have any kind of trust or faith that you're not lying to me about the other stuff when it really matters? The big stuff. If you're lying about the little stuff.
For sure. Yeah, it's a process, and we've grown up in dishonesty. We've lived in a life or a lifestyle of secrets. Most of us who've the betraying partners have gone through a life of secrecy. Something that she was never aware of. And something that we lied about from early on up in our family of origin type stuff, like you said. And a lot of times I mentioned the retreat. I don't have my cup here, but last year's retreat was the motto of fully known and fully loved. And we always felt like in this addiction, we couldn't be fully honest and fully known, because if that was happening, we wouldn't be loved. Right. And a lot of times us as addicts kind of feel like, well, if we tell the truth, that's going to mean that they're not going to love us because of the response we're going to get from them. So yeah, great stuff. Driven by fear a lot of times. So what does make somebody coming out of disclosure? I mean, we all know polygraph, going through disclosure, the importance of that, the importance of validating that is the truth and that the truth is out there. But going forward from that, what's it look like? Trust versus trustworthy. And what's the difference maybe?
The difference? Yeah. Well, and I think it's an important point. We've talked about disclosure before. Mm-hmm. To me, there's radical honesty about the past. And if we have to start with a foundation. So I do think we have to start with disclosure. That's the first place. That's we have to clean up what was the past, what wasn't it, get some truth, a foundation of truth to build from there. So I and hopefully with a polygraph and with a disclosure done right or as well as possible, hopefully we get to that foundation. What does it look like? I don't know. I don't hear too many people talking about directly honesty post disclosure. And that said, if anyone's in a 12-step program, this is from the beginning. People talk about, I'm not thinking radical honesty. Why can't I think of the phrase?
Rigorous
honesty. Yeah. Right. Rigorous honesty. So we know this isn't a new concept. That everyone knows we're supposed to be honest. That's the point. What does rigorous honesty mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What does that mean ongoing? So I've told the history, I've told the betrayal story, I've shared it. Does rigorous honesty mean I share everything about everything? Do I share, this is where I think people start to, what's privacy versus secrecy look like?
Yeah.
Do I share about everything that's happening in coaching or therapy sessions? Do I share share all my journals? And is that honest, or is that holding things back? Or, I think I will say, I think there's a place that, especially on the betraying side, like everyone I work with, they need a place where they can work through the what's happening in my head, help me, like they can be fully real and authentic. And then they have people in their life that can help them kind of piece it back together in a healthier way. So I think there is a place for that privacy. But what does it look like? I think it is, well, let me just say it this way. I don't think I've never seen anyone be able to compartmentalize integrity.
That's pretty tough, isn't it?
Well, I've had people like, well, I'm honest about my, sexual behaviors, but then they're in a job where they're lying all day, or they're lying about other things, or I don't know. I just, at least in terms of healing betrayal, let's talk two different things. I guess there's the recovery side and then the betrayal healing side. Recovery side, can I fully heal and restore myself? Can I get full recovery if I'm lying in all areas but one? I don't think so.
I don't think so. No.
I think to me, it has to be integrity. And I remember, like, the nice thing is, I think further along that you get, hopefully these things you can start to drill down to even lower, deeper levels of honesty and truth with yourself and with others. But early on, it might be the bigger things. You realize, am I telling an overt lie right now? Like, this is literally untrue coming out of my mouth.
Yep.
You may not be able to get to the subtle of withholding something, or even, the thing I just mentioned around kind of lying by syntax. Yeah. So I guess, what does it look like? I think it's, first of all, I think men, especially, if the man's the betrayer, I think they need places where they can be fully honest and call themselves out, and have other people call them out on that lack of honesty.
Yeah. There's so many levels to it too, right? I mean, you come into this being caught probably in lies, leading a deceptive life, living in a life that was nobody else really knew about, particularly your wife, and then coming out and you have to go through this disclosure, which is probably the first time you've ever told the truth, the full truth. Now you're fully known. Then you have to do a polygraph. Now you feel like I got it all out there. Now I'm trustworthy.
Oh, right. That was a trust versus trustworthy. Yeah. Well, you're trustworthy about the past, but that doesn't mean that your partner trusts you.
Yeah. But you told the truth. I passed the polygraph. You should trust me now, right? Yeah. That's what they think. And it's an ongoing, proactive, intentional act to continue to build trust. And you may never build it. It's a long road to go through that. You can do things to become trustworthy, but in the end, will she trust you?
Well,
life of integrity.
And is that, we often say trust is rebuilt through consistent, trustworthy actions over time.
Mhm.
Over time.
Over time.
So the disclosure with polygraph is huge. That's one big step, but that's one moment. That's one moment in your history.
Mhm.
It could be months, years, decades of lies, and we have one moment of truth and honesty. That one moment doesn't erase all the time the partner has had to sit with lies and dishonesty. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it takes, there's no shortcut for this, because it's the little things. It's the what ways am I showing myself trustworthy? I always use this example. If I say I'm going to be home at 6 and I'm
Yeah.
pretty clear, whatever traffic or whatever, I know I'm going to be home at 6:05 or 6:10.
Mhm.
Before discovery, probably not a big deal. But I have to understand, and this is where I think a lot of blowups happen with couples I work with.
Mhm.
Let's say the betrayer comes home at 6:05, 5 minutes after they said they would.
Mhm.
Not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Yet I told my partner I was going to be home at 6, and I wasn't home at 6.
Right.
So, and then usually what ends up happening goes some version of this, the partner gets really triggered. And by the way, on the betrayed person's side, every moment that goes by post 6 o'clock was, it's like
Mhm.
those 5 minutes are not just like, oh, it was just 5 minutes of traffic. It
Yeah.
was
Reliving it all.
reliving it all. He's
Mhm.
not trustable, all that, whatever. It goes,
Right.
it snowballs. So she or the betrayed says something like, you weren't home at 6. You said you're going to be home at 6. Where were you? And then the betrayer
It's only
says
5 minutes.
5 minutes. What's the big deal? Blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. You're making too much of it. Or, all right. Or they go to the other side. It's never good enough for you. I'm not going to be perfect.
Mhm.
And they kind of go there. And to me, this is the stuff where the rubber meets the road. Am I like, and I've done this. I don't know if you have. I've done it where I'll say, I found myself, and I'm better at it now, but let's say I know I left later than I was meaning for a thing. And I said, I'll be there in 15 minutes,
Mhm.
but I know it's going to be 30. I've done this, and I'll say, I'll be there in 15, but I
Yeah.
know in my mind, it would take a miracle to actually be there like that. These are little things.
Yeah.
But if I know I'm going to be there in 30, I don't want them to get upset because I'm later than I said I was going to. Somehow I'm trading this short-term potential lack of a blow up for what's going to happen on the other
Mhm.
end, is someone's going to be
Mhm.
more upset that I was later than I'm already going to be late, but now I added something else to the mix. So
Yeah.
I feel like those little things go a long way, and they aren't little things. That's what I guess I want to say, that this is how we rebuild safety and trust, is words and actions lining up. I say 6, I'm there by 6. And if I'm not going to be there by 6 because things happen,
You go.
I communicate that along the way, and I'm clear, or
Mhm.
I acknowledge it. Yeah, that I totally blew that, and I'm going to do better at this, and
Yeah.
have some humility when we do make mistakes
Without delay. Yeah.
without delay.
Yeah.
But that's the trustworthiness that I can show. The trust part, and this is something I think on the this is a whole maybe other conversation, but
Mhm.
on the betrayed person's side, sometimes I find I find it more helpful to scale trust as opposed to make it binary. Either I trust or I don't trust. I found that
Mhm.
much more helpful personally for when I'm working with betrayed partners.
Yeah.
That, okay, well, I don't trust him. Fair enough. You don't trust him.
Mhm.
Is there any trust? Is it 0? Or, from scale of 0 to 100, is it 5? Is it 10?
Right.
Is it 20? Is it 50? Well, that's a lot different. I
Mhm.
trust him sort of, versus mostly not at all. Like we can build some of that. What would it take then? What would it take to build from, let's say it's 25? What would it take to build to 30 or something,
Mhm.
on that
Right.
level? I feel like that's a different way to look at it than thinking we're
Yeah.
supposed to get to 100 before we have trust that's
Yeah.
rebuilt.
Black or white thinking. That's kind of what got us into this too.
Right.
Michelle always says too, she always says, trust is lost in buckets, earned back in drops.
Ooh, I like that. That's
No, it's lost all at one time, and it's a consistent process, intentional process of earning it back one drop at a time. It is. There's a good looking up here. So this is from Jake Porter. Just did a webinar recently about weaponizing recovery. So lying was one of those things about weaponizing. And he had this quote. He said, you have to understand this. Your past effort is now contaminated. It doesn't count the same way anymore. Real change must be visible, voluntary, and durable under pressure. That's a good one. Durable under pressure. Uh-huh. You can't rebuild trust. You can only become trustworthy. This journey may not save your relationship, but it can restore your integrity. You don't need to be forgiven to be a man of integrity. You need to be honest to become whole. That's pretty much all of it in a nutshell right there.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that is so, and the durable under pressure, I'm sure we can talk a lot about too, but that piece of, what am I doing this for? Am I doing this so, some guys early on I've seen they'll do, the reality is they're doing this because they really see how upset their betrayed partner is, and they don't want their partner to be upset.
Yeah. They want to protect her, right?
They do. Yeah. And I mean, they might say that, but the real truth is that's what they say. And that might be some truth to that, but let's be real. The real truth is, man, this person who I'm with now is not the same person I was with prior to discovery. They're mad, they're upset, they're volatile potentially. There's all kinds of stuff. I don't like it. I want the other person back. So what I want to heal and restore so that I get my old person back. If they're really honest, that's what most people think early on. But there's a point where, obviously if we can't stay there because that's not sustaining long term. We're never going back. So that's not realistic. But I do think we can build something way better. And ultimately, I think to your point, like if I'm trustworthy, if I'm doing these things, if I realize I need to heal for myself, I need to do this stuff for myself, regardless of, hopefully my partner can trust me at some point, but it's too important. It's for my own survival. I have to do this. Yeah. I do this, regardless of what's happening.
Right. It's a core value, being honest.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Durable under pressure though.
I like that, huh? When your partner comes at you pretty hard, trying to, what's your tendency when the pressure builds? Do you deny even more, dig the hole even deeper, or do you come out and tell the truth? Like when we go through and have a recovery plan or encourage somebody that we're working with a couple, if a relapse occurs or something occurs, that you tell them quickly within 24 hours, you report whatever it is, that boundary that was crossed. And I think just human nature is the longer you stuff that, if you wouldn't have told your wife that 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock thing, if you would have waited 24 hours or you would have waited 48, the longer you wait, the less likely you are to go back and repair that.
True.
And I think we as in human nature, we stuff it. I just told a guy this the other day. He said, do I really need to tell my group this behavior that he did? I said, well, if you don't, what's going to happen? It's going to be stuffed. And then next time, well, I stuffed this, so I didn't tell him this. So now all of a sudden I'm doing more and I'm stacking more things on top of more things. And the pile is getting bigger and bigger. Now the lie has become a big pile of garbage, instead of let's get it out and focus on this one thing. Michelle used to say this about me back when we get into a conflict, if she'd ask me a question early on during our journey, I would bring up all these I'd be grabbing at straws, trying to bring all these different things into this one. She just asked me this one question. Why do I have to bring up 16,000 other different topics to try to deflect from the importance of just answer the one question? Be truthful, walk with integrity. It's, I think when you live a life of secrecy for so long, it's your default behavior.
Yeah.
It's hard to break that. Right. And I think guys going through this I'm good. I passed the polygraph. I don't have to take another one. I'm good. And now you're supposed to trust me. It takes lots of time.
Well, think of a building metaphor. We often think this with disclosure. If disclosure is clearing rubble from the old, think of a building metaphor. We have there's a fire that destroyed the building. We got to clear the rubble. We got to sift through it. We got to see what's salvageable. And then we got to start to rebuild a new foundation. Disclosure there's not a new building built post disclosure. We've just cleared the debris. We've sifted through it. We've kind of maybe established what the cracks are in the foundation. We're starting to repair this foundation. We have the whole thing to build again, and it's going to be new. It's going to be a new structure. I believe, I mean, our belief, I know you guys see it, but my belief is that this structure will be much, much better than the previous one.
Right.
Because it's based on a foundation of that's based on solidity and truth and honesty.
Yeah.
But the building's not built.
When it doesn't, it's if you get a little crack in that structure, you got to repair it quickly. Or it'll become bigger and bigger. So yeah, if it's nobody's perfect, but continually walking through it, and repairing a rupture when it happens and not letting it go on and on and on. Somebody just put in the chat here, I saw comments. How do you help the betrayer learn to be more durable under pressure?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it? There's a lot of different ways. I'm curious what you would say. I definitely would say with the men I've worked with, you have to have self-awareness first. It's like for me, let's just use that example to be the low stakes. My wife asking me about when I start work the next day. That wasn't a high pressure situation, but for me to understand what am I afraid of? And this isn't about my wife, it's about something different. So for me to have that awareness, I think there's some of that. I think I have to do the work to be able to where, well, I'm afraid of being judged or criticized based on something. That's my shame. There's some shame. Why would there be shame? So like what the exploration really needs to work into it. So I think we have to do our self-work first, seeing what parts of ourselves show up in different situations. If there's a part of me that's afraid of, that feels ashamed for some reason and has this fear of being judged and criticized, I have to do some work on that. I have to keep mindful of that, because that part's going to show up when the pressure's really there. If this is what's happening under low pressure, it's what's happening when I screw up and I have to own something or decide if I'm going to, on a bigger scale. I think there's shame work. There's, for someone to get in if there's trauma in their background, to do some counseling therapy to heal whatever that was. Because usually to me, that's about, a lot of times we have to be aware of what our negative core beliefs are. And I think sometimes we're not even aware of those. If I feel fundamentally I'm bad, unworthy, defective, unlovable, I'm a fraud, I'm like, if I feel all these things, then we're going to read into situations stuff that might not be there. So we have to be aware of those, where they came from, kind of heal from those. So spiritual work, there's therapy work potentially that they need to do. Also, I think practicing this in a safer way, like at a group with other men, is a great way to do it.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Practicing it in a non-threatening or pressured situation.
I remember, I won't ever forget it. I was facilitating a group. One of the guys was trying to convince everyone in the group that what he did was okay. It wasn't acting out, but it was something. I don't even remember what the story was. And he's all this stuff around trying to paint this flowery picture of why this wasn't a big deal, why he didn't mess up with whatever he did. And one of the guys just said, I won't use the actual word he said, but you know what? You messed up.
Yeah.
You just said it so clearly. And the guy was like, yeah, I messed up. And it was like, instead of all the other flowery stuff he was bringing to it, like the group was able to just say, and it helped him be able to see that you were trying, you felt whatever, you felt embarrassed or guilty or shamed. And then, instead, don't try to convince us of something, just own the truth.
Yeah.
And that level of loving, direct, caring feedback, and working whatever. What do I tend to do? How do I get defensive? Do I tend to hide? What things do I do, in my relationship? Most likely it's going to show up in a group. So I think I've seen that, men being able to work this stuff out in a lower stakes environment, I think is actually really helpful.
Yeah, I do too. I think you got to practice it. Our brain goes back to what it's most comfortable with. And if that's what we're most comfortable with and that's all we know, we're going to go right back there every time. Yeah. Unless you practice it with intentionality, do it in a non-inflammatory situation where it's not as much pressure, practice and try it with your spouse too, in a situation where it's not, okay, this is something that happened maybe 5 years ago. It's not the thing that it used to be now, or what it was back then. So let's try practicing with this. I'll use an example for us way back early on, I didn't have I lost or forgot my phone charger for my car, and I had an hour and a half commute to work, and I was too cheap to go buy another phone charger. And Michelle couldn't get a hold of me for an hour and a half. So automatically her mind's going back to what I used to do my way home from work or during work or whatever it was. So because I didn't do that, and I would defend, well, I didn't want to spend $30 on a phone charger. But now it's okay. Now, how does she feel because of that? What's that make her feel like? How can I help her? You're right. Validate, reassure her that was the wrong thing to do. What can I do? Iron sharpens iron. If we don't have iron to sharpen ourselves, how do we sharpen? Guys lie in group too. And then the spouse will say, well, the group's not helping. Well, if you're not truthful in a group where men can do what you just said, you're not gonna get that help. So being intentional, doing it, practicing it with the guys in group, I think is a very good exercise to do, and then practicing it with your partner at some point.
I don't think there's any, I totally agree. I'm a really big fan of winning the morning, meaning like winning the morning. So if I get up early, earlier than I need to, because for me, journaling, meditation, prayer, some form of exercise is really important for me in the morning, because if I don't, and then actually setting intentions for the day of how do I want to show up, not just what am I going to do today, it's also how do I want to intentionally show up in the world today and be my best self in these situations. I think that's helped me a lot to be more present and available, instead of, I feel like if I do those things and I set myself in that way, it's kind of like in sports, I'm on the balls of my feet as opposed to on my heels. If I'm like, oh, I'm running from this thing and I'm just sort of kind of, going in, I feel like I'm on my heels, and then the day sort of happens, as opposed to me being more grounded and present in the day. And I'm much more able to handle what's coming at me than I am, if I'm kind of bracing for something and kind of floundering.
Yeah. So I see another one in the chat there, the comments. What does the betrayed partner do when the betrayer continues to be, quote, truthful and continues to tell her when he acts out, but doesn't stop?
That's a great question. Okay.
It's a great question.
That's really, really, really important. Thank you. Because I'm sure you have thoughts too. You want to start? You want me to start?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's his believed behavior, right? So he's supposedly in recovery, but he's continually acting out time after time after time. So there's something deeper going on there. Also, is he really in recovery? Because she's got to at some point say, okay, I'm going to believe your behavior. You keep saying you're in recovery, but you keep telling me you're relapsing. So your behavior speaks for itself. You're not in recovery. So you need to do something else. You need to go and look under the hood a little further, whether it's, investigating the trauma or some other things, or, I got to believe the behavior, and you're not being a man of recovery and of integrity and walking in the light of healthy sexuality. So my thought.
Yeah, I'm so glad because you could see how the goal is just being honest and transparent, and then we're all good. And I think, I don't know if this is the case, but I've seen situations like this where I think you're right. It feels like the person, they're ambivalent. They may actually want to change their behaviors, but part of them doesn't, or isn't fully willing to do whatever it takes and go all in. And I think sometimes the truthfulness, actually, I guess it's not fully truthfulness. If you look at it, there's a deception in it, because it's really looking at absolution, not real change. So when and maybe that's not always the case, but I've definitely seen, it's almost like, I guess it's kind of like going to confession. I confess it. But is that true? Is that true repentance if I don't actually change behaviors? So I confess something, and then I feel better about, well, I may not feel better because it's probably going to trigger the partner, but there's something about it that there's not real change. Because if I'm acting out, the next work is, what happened? What was the breach? What was the problem? Where did I mess up? Where was the issue that happened? And what do I do to fix that, so I never do that again? And then that to me is the step of repentance. The real change is, there was a gap here somewhere, a failing somewhere. What am I redoing to get back on track so that never happens again? And not to justify anything, but hopefully you never act out in the same way twice, because then,
Yeah.
you've closed loopholes, you've closed gaps, you've made what happened, what went awry here. So
Mm.
I don't, that pattern I see sometimes, it's like the person isn't really fully willing to go all in and make the full change. And so they do it, they kind of get absolution, and then they kind of go back to more of the same. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
that just puts so much undue pressure on the betrayed partner, because now
Yeah.
the partner, now it's tricky, because like, okay, well, they're sharing honesty with me, they're truthful about the acting out,
Yeah.
but now what do I do with that? I don't really feel
Mhm.
safe, because they're still continuing the behaviors.
Yeah. 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 It's a tough one, because they're put back in that position again. What do I do?
But I
Will
mean,
continue to accept it? Tolerate it? Or are you going to
tolerate it.
that she has choices, and then she has choices. What can she do? But I think, like you talked about repentance. I think too, I forget what the scripture is, but it's, once you repent or go to that place of forgiveness, you ask for forgiveness, but you continually doing the same thing over and over again. Habitual sin is looked at pretty harshly,
Right.
in the word. So they got to look at that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's a good one though, because I've seen, and especially if you get Christians, or, I think probably in different faith communities too, if you get that piece, and then they might throw scripture about forgiveness back in there, or other pieces that, like, well, I've done the right thing, I've told you the truth, and then that sort of gets used to manipulate. Now your job is to forgive me, which maybe, but that's, again, that's a whole other conversation. But
Right. Yeah.
that's different than, what I want to see, the truthfulness. What I would also hope, let me just add that piece, is if someone's doing that, to do some reflection. What happened? What went awry? Do their own self-reflection first. Talk to their team. What went awry? Come up with a plan and a strategy for what they're going to do about this moving forward. So I would want to see those pieces added to, even if someone's relapsing or acting out. I'd want to see that added too. What happened? What's your reflection about what went wrong? And then what are you going to do about it? Like if you don't have those pieces in, then the partner's going to have to drag that out of you, because they're going to want to know. Like every partner is going to want to know, again, what happened, why did this happen, and what's your plan about what you're going to do about it. So you can do that legwork before you kind of force your partner into that position.
Yeah. And then what are you going to do? You keep saying you're doing that, but then again, the action keeps coming back.
Right.
You don't.
So believe the actions.
Yeah. Yeah. Michelle gave me this quote from Lisa Turkhurst this morning, said, "Trust is the oxygen of all human relationships."
Oof.
It's a pretty deep quote, isn't it?
Yeah. Man, well, my heart goes out to the betrayed partners, because that crumbles immediately after betrayal. That oxygen, we lose that oxygen supply.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough.
Yeah. And we need it again. I don't think we can do any kind of trust rebuilding without. You tell me if anyone out there can tell me how you can rebuild trust and safety in a relationship with dishonesty. I would love to know. I really would. I would love to know that that's possible in a real way. That's not just we pretend to look the other way, and that's really, really authentic safety and trust. I don't see how it's possible. I think that's why it's so foundational to kind of 12-step work and to what we're doing, and why it's not a surprise. Everyone knows honesty is important, but it's so tricky. That's why I wanted to start with the little things that I'm still working on. Clearly, I still got work to do. I consider myself a person of integrity. That's really important to me. And yet there's still stuff I've got to work on, and hope, I'm not going to be perfect, but hopefully I can keep working on that and becoming even more of that person each day, so that, there's not even as much of the little ruptures anymore,
Yeah. Well, back to your question, that's a good question on how you worded it. But, like you said, the 12 steps, how do you make amends, or even a living amends, on a day-to-day basis if you keep doing the same thing over and over again? That person you're making that or lie, say it's lying, it's deception, it's not being truthful, 100%, whether it's omission or whether it's not, it's a blatant lie. You keep going back to that well, eventually that well's going to run dry, and there's no room for that living amends, because it's not going to happen anymore, because you don't show any true change.
Right.
And without change, you can't walk a life of integrity.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't feel, well, maybe that's a good point. A living amends feels like there's a present and ongoing, element to it. If I make is it helpful if I make an amends for all my past wrongdoings, but then I continue to do those same things? Like, I don't think is that a real, will people really, can we expect someone to take that as a real amends?
No, not at all.
I'm owning the impact of these things, but I continue doing them.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. How long do you think a partner should, I don't know about giving grace is the right phrase, but expect a complete change in that area of being trustworthy, because of living a lie of deceit, living that lifestyle of deceit and lies and secrecy, and keeping keeping things stuffed below the surface. It takes time to change. Like I said earlier, your brain goes back to what it's most comfortable with. Our initial, I think, as betrayers coming out of this, is my immediate response was to lie. If my mom asked me a question when I was a kid, my immediate response was to deflect from the truth, because I knew the truth would either get me in trouble or cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not something you just snap your fingers and you're good. How long do you think till you see change, if a guy is in active good recovery?
As you're saying that, I was thinking of so many different things. I guess it depends on how, I don't know. I'm wrestling because I want to give a number. I want to give a number. I want to give some, I think it depends. It depends on what the level of self-deception's there, what level of emotional awareness the person has. Cause sometimes it's even, I'm not even aware of the emotional experience I have. So I'm saying something that, but I'm not even, I don't have that self-awareness to even know some of this stuff yet. So sometimes people have more deficits, I guess I'll say it that way, that we have to work on, prior to getting to clarity. I think it's let me just say some of the things you'd want to see. Maybe it's not a time frame, but things you'd want to see. I'm much more, when someone's willing to come back and acknowledge when they did lie, when they did make a mistake, when they did screw up, when they're willing to do that, it can be painful, but when it's, there's a much better quote that I forget the person who said it, but it's some version of, truth freely given is always better than truth forcefully taken, or something like that.
Yeah.
Always, right? I mean, it's painful, but if I share something that didn't have to be dragged out of me, that's going to go better. So sometimes that's a starting place. Will the person, can they have self-reflection to look, that's 10 steps work. Can I look at, wow, you know what? I told you this today and that wasn't the truth. I screwed up and I'm really sorry about that. What version of that? And this is what I'm, doing about that. So I think, can the person acknowledge it and start to, and is reflective about lies or deceptions, and they're coming forward with it and they're more trustworthy. To me, that's, even if it's triggering about a lie, it's a trustworthy action to tell the truth.
Right.
So it can be both at the same time. And I've found, actually, depending on what it is, I've seen more often than not, betrayed partners craving that. It's like, everything I know is only because I found out anything. Or because I've had to drag it out of you. But when they start, and it could be little things, but wow, he came to me and told me something that I didn't have to discover. Those are little signs. Okay, we're moving in the right direction.
Right.
Hopefully, I think of it, sometimes it's analyzing the train wreck after it happened. What happened with this train wreck, and picking it, figure it out. Hopefully we start working backwards and getting to the point in the middle of it. Maybe the person's like, you know what? That's not true. Actually, it's this. and then they kind of catch themselves in the middle
Yep.
of it. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
I don't know if you resonate with that, but sometimes
Yeah.
I was saying this and I just came out of my mouth. I'm not even sure why I said that. It's actually this. So we're catching it in the middle.
Happened to me, and you can tell when you start feeling that yourself, like self-reflection, when you get convicted enough to say, I was wrong. That was not true. Just like the 8 o'clock versus 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was driving home from work one day in my previous job, and my boss called and asked, did you get XYZ done? My immediate thing, for fear of not being getting it done on time, was to say, yeah, I got it done. I'll get it to you. And that's what I said, instead of saying, no, I didn't get it done. So when I hung up the phone, I was so convicted to say, that was not true. I just lied to him blatantly, and it was not true. So I called him right back and told him that, and said, no, I did not get that done, but I will get it done for you tomorrow morning and get it to you as soon as possible. I think when those moments come where you're initiating the repair, you're actually being specific about what that repair is. This is what I did or didn't do. And I think somebody, I forget who said this, but whenever you're saying something that's trying to change the narrative of the conversation or the situation that you're in, that's distorting the truth. That's
Ooh, interesting. I like that.
So
right.
You guys got to ask themselves, am I trying to change the narrative of the conversation I'm having with her by saying this? And that's probably a lie. And I need to go back and revisit that.
Right. And sometimes it might be the kind of bigger things at first, like the more overt lies. I said this, but it was this. And then hopefully the more difficult stuff is, what I didn't tell you was, you asked this, but what I didn't tell you was this other piece, or I told you a partial truth. That's the other thing, because we can start to convince ourselves, well, I told the truth, but it wasn't really the truth, or it was part of it, but with the real truth, what that was, so that stuff that starts the next layer to not get out of your own self-deception that I told the truth, and convincing yourself you told the truth when really you didn't, that part of it, I think is the next level to start seeing. And hopefully even before we get there is like even catching yourself before you even start to do it, so that you can, you don't have to make the repair after the fact. But time frame for that, I mean, sometimes some people have really limited self-awareness of that. You have to be. Sometimes I'll have people do a lie journal, and like, well, I didn't lie today. Well, BS, you lied today. I don't know what it was. You minimized something. You exaggerated something. I think, and I found people it might not even be this. I told this direct, complete lie to somebody, but it was like, I exaggerated the truth a bit to make myself look a bit better in the situation, or I manipulated the conversation. So really tracking, what am I doing? I want myself to look, I don't like looking like the bad guy. So I made myself look a bit more like a hero or a victim in the situation, as opposed to the bad guy.
Yeah.
That when we can start to do that and especially with groups or other men like that, man, that's the work, I think, to start doing.
Absolutely. Key is groups, right? Staying in group or staying in community.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought this is good, and I know you're on a tight schedule here, so we'll wrap this up here pretty shortly. But Jake Porter said this at our conference in March. He said, when he was talking about honesty and integrity, he said, in the past, I'd rather lie to you than lose you. Now I would rather lose you than lie to you. So I think that puts it pretty bluntly and direct, that lying is unacceptable. And I think coming up and living this life of betrayal and coming through recovery, if we're not totally 100% transparent in those things, coming out of that darkness that we were in, our wives are going to feel that, and they're going to respond, because they've been lied to for so long. They need to hear the truth. But that's 100%. Why you have it at the base of the intimacy pyramid.
Right. And that how important, like, it has to become, we have to become allergic to the lies, as opposed to that was the place I sheltered in for what I thought was safety, and maybe needed it at some point, or it helped me survive at some point. It doesn't help now. It destroys myself. It destroys my relationship. I have to be allergic to it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. As we wrap up, and everybody, remember, you can see Dan live at the Men Make Men retreat in October next month. Can't wait for that. Anything that, well, two things, I guess. What's one specific suggestion or thing that you would recommend for guys to do early in recovery? I think we've talked about it, but maybe is there one thing that you could put out there for them to, or a tool that they could use walking this? And then how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I was thinking of a few. Well, I mean, we said it. I think I don't think if we're used to living a certain way, we're going to be in our own heads about it. We need community. We need other people that know us and love us and can support us, but also call us on our own kind of thinking stuff where I'm in my own head and I don't recognize it. So we have to have places that we can be transparent and vulnerable, and that, we can be in community with accountability.
Yeah.
So that's huge. I think just building self-awareness. I think we can't do this without. So if it starts with tracking what was a overt lie, what was a minimization, what was a withholding that I did today, exaggeration. I think starting with that and knowing, and starting to look at why am I doing this? And what I'm doing it because I'm trying to protect myself somehow, but actually it's causing harm. So I guess just starting with those pieces, there's self-reflection, but you have to do that in community.
Yeah. And also look at what you can do. What can I initiate to help start building trust back and becoming a trustworthy person again? Being intentional, initiating check-ins or feelings and stuff like that, whatever you need to do, she deserves it. So appreciate it. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how's the best way to contact you or Banyan Therapy? Yeah,
Banyan Therapy Group. So Banyan Therapy Group would probably be the easiest way. One thing that I am very, very, very passionate about, spent blood, sweat, and tears on disclosure workbooks, the importance of honesty and rebuilding honesty after betrayal, and how do we do that, as that foundation. So that's the starting point. I think is really, really, really important. A passion for. We can't build any of this back if we don't have a foundation of honesty that we're building from. So to me, that's the starting place.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dan. Good to have you on again. Always good conversation, and look forward to seeing you next month.
Appreciate you, Tom. Looking forward to it.
All right, Dan. Have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.